In this edition of Radio KD8TTE, we're going to take a look at a message that was relayed, and we're going to give point-by-point commentary in order to improve performance. Stick around. Today we're going to take a look at a radio message that came to my station as part of our County Information Report Project 20. We're going to look at it, we're going to analyze it, and talk about the kinds of errors that are very easy to make and that many stations are making. That's all right. This is a training environment, and that's the whole point of doing the training, so that we can work these kinks out as we're getting into it. So today's goal is to understand the radiogram format in preparation for proper radio message handling. The way that we're going to get there is, number one, looking at an example radiogram that actually came in. Number two, we're going to look at the receiver's form and point out this is the first time that this station operator has actually done this. So what we're going to see here is a lot of the stuff that people will be doing just naturally as they're trying to work their way through the messaging process. The reason I want to focus on this is because errors are really instructive. When somebody makes a mistake the first time that they're doing something, it gives you a very good indication of what might come naturally and helps us as a training matter to understand what we need to emphasize for newer operators, people who have not been performing this task for a long time. A couple of things to point out about the message that we're going to be talking about today is that this is, of course, a training message, and that this message was brought into an Aries County net. It was listed on the net, and no station volunteered to take that traffic. The net control operator decided to take it and just to keep it moving. That raised some interesting challenges all by itself, and we'll talk briefly about that as well. So let's take a look at the original radiogram. I actually got this after the fact from the originator, and it's helpful to take a look at that first because we want to see how did it look at the station before it began the process of relay by radio. It looks like a perfectly normal radio message. It seems to be formatted well, and the only thing that I want to point out is that we do not have down in the bottom right in the accounting the sent section. It's not complete. So if we look at this radio message as it is at the moment, it doesn't look like that the message has left the station. I've got a copy of it, so clearly it has left the station, and so the accounting is missing, and that's going to be something very important that we want to emphasize. A big part of this format is making sure that we have accounting so we can keep track of messages that they have left the station, when they left the station, and how. We're going to talk about relay and how that happened here. And remember, the goal with radio relay is to get that message exactly right, word for word, letter for letter. The copy that sits on the receiving station should be identical to the copy that was sitting on the sending station. So again, this is a training exercise, so I'm going to black out the identity of the station that received this through relay and actually got it over to me. It doesn't matter who it is. I do want to point out, though, it is an amateur extra licensee. So it's not somebody who is inexperienced or doesn't understand radio. The whole concept of radio messaging is very specific, and it's just going to take practice to be able to get good at it. So it's not license class that determines how well you're able to do something. The license class is going to give you authorization to use certain parts of the spectrum, but when it comes down to it, no matter what the task is, you gotta train, you gotta practice, and that's the only way that you're going to be good at it. All right, so if we take a look at the message, we've got a number here that is not unreasonable. 4 digits makes perfect sense. It's not going to be the kind of thing that starts over so often that we have to keep track of which day it was or which week it was or anything like that. With a number up in the 4 digits, probably this isn't going to be something that needs to start even every year. And so we're going to be able to use that. It's also not humongous so that it's, going to take a long time to transmit and the number itself becomes a burden. So when we have our precedence, which comes right after the number, this is written out routine. And that's how we voice it when we're talking about radio relay on voice nets. The way that we will voice this message begins with number 1041 routine. And so that's the way that it's written here. However, the way that we write these is going to be the same way that we have them in radiotelegraphy. And that means that we're going to use the abbreviation. So when we're talking about the precedence, routine is abbreviated R, welfare is abbreviated W, and of course priority is abbreviated P. Emergency is the exception. Emergency is always written out. It is never abbreviated. This particular message is actually presented in the form of the ARRL radiogram, the autofill PDF version. A lot of people like it. It seems kind of handy. I don't particularly like it because it does scale the text so that it will fit in the box, and that makes it difficult to read. What we actually have in this box for handling instructions, it's H ampersand C B48. And this looks to me like it was probably just misunderstood in a voice relay. So it probably came out HXC, and what the recipient heard was H and C, and then correctly heard the B48, Bravo 48. So this is an example of where this can be mangled and has been mangled beyond recognition into a nonsensical handling instruction. Voicing makes this easier. Voice procedure is going to be handling instructions Charlie, handling instructions Bravo, forward 8. And what that means is that we're going to get HXC, HXB48. That's what we should have. Always remember that it is difficult to copy the traffic. The sending station operator needs to do everything they can to avoid confusion and to help the recipient, the receiving station, to get it right. We do have time-sensitive traffic. Handling instructions Bravo 48 means that you've got 48 hours to get this thing to its destination for delivery. This message was brought to a net and nobody volunteered to take the traffic. So the question is, what do you do? Well, net control's job is to keep the net moving. You're not supposed to take care of any job that is undone. Net control manages the flow of information on the net, manages who has control of the circuit. That's keep the net moving. If there's no formal liaison who's been listed, who's able to take that traffic and move it to another outlet, that's a net manager problem. The net manager has not provided the correct design for that net to be able to communicate with the outside world. And so it's useful only insofar as you want to talk to each other. If you don't have a liaison, but there is one that has been established, then that's going to be an issue that you have to deal with in either the manager or possibly the liaison. And it might not really be something you can do anything about. It might be that the liaison is on another net taking messages that are meant to be brought here, and that kind of stuff does happen. So in any case, it doesn't really matter. But it is something that we're able to use as an example to show how many Aries nets are organized with a very insular view. That is, they see the county, they're there for the purpose of providing tactical messaging within the county, but they don't have the ability to handle record traffic very well in many cases, and they very often do not have the ability to reach out to another net. So whose fault it is doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is that we're here now. Net Control has traffic that has been listed and it has to go somewhere else. Net Control asked for volunteers. That makes perfect sense. That's a reasonable thing to do. Net Control also has another option. You could ask the station that's listing the traffic if they have the ability to go to another net where there will be an outlet. Now, you shouldn't do it vaguely. If you're Net Control, you want to be specific. In this case, we're talking about Licking County. That's part of Aries District 7. Aries District 7 is covered by the Central Ohio Traffic Net. And so Net Control could have asked the station listing the traffic, can you take this traffic to COTN? And the station could respond, yes, I can, no, I can't, it's going to take too long, whatever it is. You'd provided an option to make sure that the traffic is able to stay in play. In this particular case, Net Control saw that there was a route, saw an opportunity to keep the traffic moving, and volunteered to take it personally. Nothing wrong with that, but it does add to the burden of Net Control considerably, and that's already a busy job. Enough of that. Let's move on to the next bit. Kilo Delta 8, Sierra Charlie Lima is our station of origin, no problem there. Now we take a look at our check, and check is going to be 21. This is voiced as 2-1. So the receiving station is just going to be copying it as it's transmitted to us, no problem. We write down 2-1. The place of origin is good. We see the city and state written out correctly. Pataskala, the city name, OH, the standard U.S. Postal Service abbreviation for the state. It is correct. It is clear. Moving on, we have time filed. This is good because we have handling instructions Bravo 48. It specifies a number of hours that this message has to live. And so we need to have that time filed. Now, the only thing I want to point out here is that it's actually ambiguous. We don't have a time zone indicated. The way that we handle that on the traffic system is that if there is no time zone indicated, we assume Zulu time. It may or may not be correct, but it's best to disambiguate by indicating the time zone that you want. You may use the single letter version like Zulu. You may also use a common standard abbreviation such as EDT for Eastern Daylight Time, EST for Eastern Standard Time. Just make sure that you don't write down EST if we're in daylight savings time. A lot of people do that, and of course it throws everything off by an hour, and there's really no way to know if you have written the right time or not unless somebody sits there and figures out, well, did you really mean daylight when you in fact wrote standard? Not a good position to put somebody else in. Amateur practice also allows for the single letter L to indicate local time. This is not a practice that I particularly like because there is a time zone Lima. All of the time zones have one-letter abbreviations that can be used, just like Zulu. It does work in the United States, however, because time zone Lima is actually 11 hours ahead of Zulu time. And so we're talking about New Zealand and the islands up that way. So it's pretty clear that if you have Lima and you're talking about something happening in the United States, it's going to be local time. So it is allowable, but it's not my favorite practice. Let's go on to the date. We see the way it's written is 19 Aug 20. The amateur format for the date is standardized, and it's meant to be the three-letter abbreviation for the month, as we have it written here, and then to have the day of the month follow it. So in this case, it should actually be written August 19, and the way that it is voiced is August 19er. So we write down AUG 19, we voice it August 19er. If it were earlier in the month, it's important to remember we don't use leading zeros either, so it should not be August 03, for example. It is simply voiced August 3, and it is written AUG space 3. The year is also something that we do not include on these because these radio messages are formatted for transmission, and they don't stay in play long enough for the year to be needed to disambiguate. So this is going to be something that's in play for minutes, for hours, maybe a couple of days, not weeks, not months, not years. We don't need the year, so we typically don't use it, and you won't see it on any examples that we get from the ARRL or RRI. Moving on to the addressee, or the to section, the to part of the radiogram, we want to make sure that there is as much information as necessary so that a delivering station is able to get the message to the addressee without having to do a lot of extra work. You shouldn't make the delivery station go look up a phone number or figure out some way to get it to somewhere. As much information as you have that will help that delivery to be made, that's what you should put in there. Now, in this particular case, we're talking about a message coming from Licking County in District 7 areas, going to me. Also, I am in District 7. I happen to be in Franklin County. This is enough information for this message to route within District 7. It will come to the District Net, Central Ohio Traffic Net, and I am known on that net, so somebody is going to be able to get that message and they're going to be able to get it to me. So this is enough information, but if we were moving it across the state or across the country, we'd want to make sure that we include, at the very least, city, state, and zip. We use zip code as a routing means in the National Traffic System Digital, sometimes also known as the Digital Traffic Network. Now, in this pre-printed form, there is no place to put an email address, but like I just said, anything that you can put in there that makes it easier for the station delivering the traffic to do so, you should include it. So there is no place to put an email address in here, but it is 100% legit. So it does go in the to part of the radiogram. Normally it comes after the phone number, but there isn't a place to do that here. So this is a very reasonable thing to do. Perfectly cool. This also brings us to another aside on the issue of format versus a form. The format defines the order in which things appear. It defines the way that they should appear so that they can be clearly understood. A form is a way to organize some piece of media so that it can store information on a screen or on a page. Format is flexible. Forms tend to be rigid, and that's where you can wind up getting into trouble if you are trying to use a pre-printed form and it did not anticipate something that is legal by the format. When you're copying, you just have to figure out some place to put it. Now, in this particular case, I've got an example of that same message that I have put into the proper format without using a pre-printed form. And in this case, you can see I've put the email address after the phone number. I've also formatted the email address properly for relay. We could have phone numbers, fax numbers, WinLink, packet, any kind of routing information could be in there. It is a flexible format. It's the form that couldn't handle it. So the operator didn't do anything wrong here. The operator did the only reasonable thing, which was to jam it in the only place that the form would allow it while still fitting within the format. FL message is something that I've mentioned earlier and is something that will help you if you are trying to format messages for transmission and you're not very familiar with the format. The bad news is it's not perfect, and so it suffers the same problem that you have with the pre-printed forms that come from the ARRL. That is, there's no place for an email address, so if you want to put an email address in there, you're going to have to find a place to jam it in there, and you wind up doing it right exactly in the same place as you would with the pre-printed form. Something else that I've discovered lately with FL Message is that if you are looking at the delivery or even the file copies that FL Message will generate with HTML, it will actually lose the op note. It just swallows it. It's just gone. This is a bad problem. So in the case of the message that I formatted and I put it into this FL message form, there is a space in the FL message form for an op note. And you can see I put in there no signature. And when I take a look at the HTML copy of it, it's just not there. So if I open up the message in FL message, then yeah, I can see that it's there, but the whole point of having a file copy is so that you can put that copy in the file, and you don't need to keep around that format that is specifically for FL message. All right, let's go back to the message as it was received and talk about what we're dealing with here. So we've gone through the preamble, we've gone through the address part. We are now going to move on to the text. The first thing that I notice is that we've got 4 lines, 5 groups. That makes 20 groups. We've got a check, however, of 21. We know that we've got a mismatch. There's a problem somewhere. Let's just work our way through the message and see if we can find it. So I've got a copy of the message that the sender actually had, and I got that after I've received the message from the relay station. And so this is how we're making this comparison to see exactly how the relay process worked for us. So in this case, the first group, CIRP20, that's the County Information Report Project 20, making that a single group makes it easy for us to identify what this message is about without using up a lot of words in a very short message format. So what we have is that gets broken into 2 groups on the very first transmission here. Now the way that this should be voiced, again to make it easier for the receiving station operator to make sense of it, is mixed group Charlie, India, Romeo, Papa, 2, 0. That tells the receiving station that this is all one group with initials and figures. That's what mixed group is about. And then when we're reading all of that, it will be clear that these belong all together. Next group is the word objective. Now, the groups are out of sync. We are now receiving group 3, but we're transmitting group 2. Don't worry about that. Now, the receiving station has no idea that anything is wrong here. And so the whole point is we want just to keep receiving. We can get the message and make sense of it after we have the whole thing in many cases. Moving on to our next group, we have another little problem, and that is the word 7 has become the figure 7. Now, some people are going to say this is close enough, but that's just not how it works. Remember, we are getting the message to its destination word for word, letter for letter. So, what we are going to do if we want the receiving station operator to record the word 7, we're going to make sure that we're clear about it. Voice procedure, again, is going to help. The way that we voice this is 7. I spell Sierra, Echo, Victor, Echo, November. The receiver then knows to write it out. We don't leave anybody guessing. The more time they spend guessing, the more likely that they're going to fall behind. The more confused they get, the worse the relay becomes. So, if we wanted the receiving station to write down the figure 7, then we would use the pro word, figure 7. Now, this is also helpful for the receiver to know, because if the receiver has a message that they've copied and it's got that figure 7 written in there, that's what they wrote, but they didn't hear the pro word, figure. That's not right. So the pro word tells them before they start writing that group what exactly they are recording, or if they're typing it, whatever. The next group relays just fine, no problem. And then the next group is fine, except, oh, we have a typo. Now, this is kind of an interesting typo. What we have on the receiving side is the initials Charlie, Oscar, Uniform, November, Romeo, Yankee. So is this the word county, where the R is in place of a T? Or is it the T is just missing, and it's actually supposed to be the word country? Now, in this case, it's pretty clear what we're talking about. We're talking about Licking County, not Licking Country. But Not all messages are going to work out this way. If we're talking about medications or something along those lines, we're not going to be able to figure it out, and we might in fact substitute one thing for another. Plenty of words are off by only a letter. Moving on, the next group is just fine. And then there's something strange here. We've got this word, a group, M. Again, how could this happen? Well, it could be just a false start. The station that's transmitting by voice might just say, it comes through the repeater, so they hear, and on the receiving side, and just write that down. We don't know. I wasn't there for the relay. In any case, we want to be clear about this. The sender, if the sender wants that to be there, should voice it clearly. Initial, mic. That's what you need to hear if you're going to write down a group with just the letter M. All right, going on, we can see, okay, we're back in sync. We understand what's happening now. We just had an extra word. So this is a good example, again, of how you're going to just write everything down as it's coming in. Don't worry about if it makes sense while you're writing. After you have the whole thing, you can figure out whether it makes sense, and then you can challenge the sending station to sort out any discrepancies. The next group is fine. The group after that is fine. And this is a good example of how we have a frequency, in this case, a figure with a decimal in it, being properly encoded. So what we're talking about is a frequency here, 444.500. This is properly encoded for radio transmission, and this is going to be voiced clearly. Mixed group, forward, Romeo, 500. We, again, using mixed group to make sure that the receiving station operator understands what's coming and gets it correct. Next group is relayed well, the next couple are relayed well, and then we get to frequencies. There is a typo on the sender's copy. If this happens, you just got to pay attention when you're sending these things, when you're writing them up in the first place. You probably meant to use the usual spelling, so this is not a crisis. However, what we see on the receiving side is not going to match. Well, in fact, in this case, it doesn't match because there's also a typo there, and it's a different typo. So this is a double uh-oh. It's training. This is a good example because this did happen in practice. So this is when we talk about the need to be careful and spell things out and watch your spelling and all of that. These are not abstractions. These are not things that we talk about that could theoretically go wrong. This is what does go wrong in training. So it will go wrong in practice if we're not careful in training to correct ourselves and beat any of the bad habits out of our operation. Next three groups come through just fine, as well as, and then we run into some real trouble here. We've got 4 groups in the sender's copy that wound up compressing down to a single group on the receiver's side. So the way that this should be voiced by the sender: mixed group, forward, 0, mic, and mixed group 80, mic, initials, hotel, foxtrot. Paying a little bit more attention to our cadence, we could also help the receiving station to understand that these are different groups with a little bit of a pause. Mixed group, forward, 0, mic, and mixed group 80, mic, initials, hotel, foxtrot. The addition of that space gives just a little bit more time for the receiving station to understand, oh, a new word is coming, and is not somehow a pronounced part of this mixed group that came through here. We want the voice procedure to do the work to make clear what is to be copied. Now, something else, we cannot have a group that has an ampersand character in it. We cannot have a group that has a space in it. Ampersand is a group all by itself. It's actually spelled out like other punctuation, as we've seen in other videos. So if we wanted ampersand to be part of that message, we would have a group spelling out the word ampersand. And we just can't have a space in a group. That would be 2 groups. The next group Almost made it through nicely. That's the word frequencies, but again, there is a typo. This time it's only on the receiving station side. It is correct on the sending station side. So let's take a look at the signature. Here it is on the sender, and on the receiver side, it's just gone. There isn't one. So the signature is part of the message. It must be recorded. I hope that it was actually transmitted. Maybe it wasn't. Again, I wasn't there for the transmission. I don't know. But the point is, the signature is part of the message. Every bit a part of the message as the addressee, every bit as part of the message as the text, every bit a part of the message as the preamble. It is part of the message, and it must be transmitted. So it should be voiced just like any other part of the text. It is good practice to spell out names because often names can be spelled a couple of different ways. So in this case, the way that it should be voiced is Brett. I spell Bravo, Romeo, Echo, Tango. Amateur call, Kilo, Delta 8, Sierra, Charlie, Lima. Initials, Echo, Charlie. That will be very clear what exactly is to go in the signature. We've got this message, we take a look at it, and bad news, we do not have the accounting completed here either. So the receiving station doesn't have a copy of it that says from whom they got the message. We don't know when they received the message, and so it doesn't even look like it's actually on our station. It looks like it was just intercepted. If it were just intercepted, that would be copying for training purposes, for practice, but it would mean that there's no work to be done here. So that's a big problem. We do need to make sure that that accounting is taken care of. That is the information necessary to handle these messages properly. And of course, the final step, once we've actually transmitted it and it's off of our station, we need to complete the other part of the accounting, which is the sending of the message. So we need to show in the sent box the station that received it from us and the date and time that we made that transmission. Now, if it got off of our station by delivery, that is, by having us send the message by, handing it to somebody, or by giving it to a courier or a runner, or whatever we did, but it's delivery, not radio relay, we can still use the sent box for that, but it would make sense for us in that case. We don't put the station name, we would put the person or the means, however we made that delivery down in this box. In any case, the sent and the received, the accounting portion of this radio message, is going to help us to understand that it was handled, how long it took for us to handle it, and so on. Overall, this is not too bad. This is good first-time performance. It does highlight the need for training and practice. The stuff is just not trivial. A few things that we can take away. The check and the group count mismatch, they indicated that there was an error, so that should have led into a process by which the receiving station challenges the sending station and just make sure that they get it right. Also, there's spelling and typing errors. You just got to make sure you're paying attention to that stuff. We have good examples of encoding for transmission here. So we're doing all of this because we are preparing. The Simulated Emergency Test annual exercise is coming up. In Ohio, it is the first full weekend of October, as always, and this is going to be during the large Black Swan Communications exercise. Website is www.blackswancomex.org. Please do like the video if you found this useful. Share it if you think that others can benefit. And be sure to subscribe to the channel to catch all of my training tips in how to handle radio messaging, and we will get into other types of emergency radio communications. Meanwhile, this is Radio KD8TTE out.